And I went to San Juan Capistrano to our friends at the Coach House.
Dave Mason, best known as a founding member of the band Traffic, has passed away, leaving behind a legacy deeply embedded in the roots of rock history. According to confirmed reports, Mason's death has drawn attention from across the music world, not only because of his role in a legendary band, but because of the lasting impact of his work as both a collaborator and solo artist. At first glance, the news may feel like the loss of another name from a distant era. But for those who understand his contributions, this moment carries far more weight. Mason wasn't just part of the scene, he helped define it. To understand Dave Mason's significance, you have to go back to the late 1960s, a time when music was rapidly evolving. Alongside Steve Winwood, Jim Capaldi, and Chris Wood, Mason co-founded Traffic, a band that stood out not just for its sound, but for its willingness to experiment. Traffic wasn't confined to one genre. They blended rock, jazz, folk, and psychedelic influences into something that felt new and unpredictable. And Mason played a critical role in shaping that identity. He contributed to some of the band's most recognizable work, including the song Feelin Alright, a track that would go on to become a classic, covered by numerous artists and cemented as a staple in rock history. This wasn't just songwriting, it was cultural imprinting. But Mason's journey with Traffic was anything but straightforward. Unlike many band stories that follow a steady rise, his time with the group was marked by multiple departures and returns. He left the band shortly after its formation, came back, left again, a pattern that reflected both creative differences and a desire for independence. And this is where his story becomes more interesting. Rather than being defined by instability, Mason's willingness to step away showed something else, a refusal to be confined. He wasn't interested in staying where he didn't fully align. That decision, while complicated, ultimately allowed him to explore a broader artistic identity. After his time with Traffic, Dave Mason built a solo career that further solidified his place in music history. His 1970 album, Alone Together, became one of his most recognized works, showcasing not just his guitar skills, but his ability to craft cohesive, emotionally resonant music on his own terms. But perhaps more importantly, Mason became known as a collaborator, a musician other musicians trusted. He worked with major artists across different genres, contributing his sound to projects that extended far beyond his own discography. This ability to adapt, to blend into different musical environments while still leaving a mark, is part of what made him so respected within the industry. What makes Dave Mason's legacy unique is that it isn't always loud or obvious. He wasn't the most controversial figure. He didn't dominate headlines. He wasn't constantly in the spotlight. And yet, his influence is everywhere. From the structure of classic rock songwriting to the blending of genres that is now standard in modern music, traces of Mason's approach can still be found today. Artists who never met him have been shaped by a sound he helped pioneer. That's the kind of legacy that doesn't fade quickly. Following news of his passing, reactions from fans and fellow musicians have begun to surface, many reflecting not just on his achievements, but on the consistency of his work. There's a recurring theme in these reactions: respect. Not just admiration, but respect for someone who contributed meaningfully without constantly demanding attention. In an era where visibility often defines success, Mason's career reminds people that impact doesn't always come from being the loudest voice. Sometimes, it comes from being the most authentic one. So why does this story matter now? Because it highlights something that often gets overlooked: the difference between fame and influence. Dave Mason may not have always been at the center of public attention, but his work shaped the environment that many others stepped into. He was part of the foundation, not just the surface. And when someone like that passes away, it forces a reevaluation, not just of their career, but of how we measure importance. In the end, Dave Mason's story isn't defined by a single band, a single song, or a single moment. It's defined by continuity. From Traffic to his solo work, from collaborations to cultural influence, his presence remained consistent, even as the music industry changed around him. And that consistency is what makes his legacy durable. Because trends fade, styles evolve, but foundational influence, that stays.